Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nigel. Good morning, Colin.
It's great to
How are
see you,
you?
Michael. Yes.
I'm extremely well, thank you.
That's great news. Great news. Shall we go?
Yeah, I think we should kick it off. Yes.
Hello, this is Nigel.
And this is Colin with another Encore Years podcast.
This is about retirement and learning to love it.
So our plan is we release one of these conversations each week. And if you're enjoying it, please give us a thumbs up and click subscribe and all that sort of good stuff. And today we're really lucky. We've got Michael with us, who has a most extraordinary retirement and where he's living and all sorts of things he does. So I'm really looking forward to learning a lot about you, Mike.
Well, I've been looking forward to this, Michael, for a long time now. But first question, what did you do before retiring?
Well, I'll repeat what I say to a lot of people, which is I can't remember what I did before because it was 17 years ago I retired. But no, I worked most of my career in the chemical industry because that's what I studied at university. I was the world's worst chemist probably, so I worked on the commercial side of the chemical industry, mostly for quite big companies, British Oxygen, Unilever, and then for a Swedish-based multinational. That was for most of my career, maybe 30 odd years. Then I started a business on a self-employed basis, running training courses and consultancy. Did that for a few years. I also worked for a couple of charities, so done a variety of things, mostly as what the Japanese call a salaryman, in other words, for big organisations. But about 10 years of it was basically on a self-employed basis. So I've been on both sides of the street in that respect.
Actually, I've never heard that expression, a salaryman.
Salaryman.
I think it's Japanese.
Yes, I like that.
Is that a Japanese word or do they
No,
say
I don't think
salary?
so. No, it's as they, like many other nations, have just borrowed one of our words, really, or they've borrowed two of our words and put them together, really. But then that's
I
fair
think
enough, because let's face it, English is a bastard language because we've borrowed words from all over the globe, haven't we?
We have indeed. We have indeed. So tell me, once you retired from being a salaryman, what was
Yes.
the first 6 months like?
Well, the first 6 months really weren't that different because I still carried on doing most of the self-employed work that I was doing before. So, for example, Nigel, the reason you and I know each other is because we're both writers. Although I write non-fiction, I think you write mostly fiction. And so I carried on doing that. I carried on doing some coaching work, or rather spending most of my time trying to business development in coaching, because I was coaching wedding speakers. So I carried on doing much of what I'd done before. So I was only technically retired.
Did you say wedding speakers?
Yes, because the company I worked for 20 years, the Swedish company, was taken over by a competitor, and I worked for them for about 5 years. And one of the things they asked me to do was to run training courses in business English, because they said, you know, we're a multinational. Officially, our company language is English, but we've got employees all over the world, and their written English is pretty good. In fact, their written English was in many cases better than most Brits, actually. But they said they lack confidence in speaking the language, so you could design and deliver some training courses in, let's say, business communication skills combined with English. So I started doing that. And one of the courses happened to be presentation skills, because obviously if it's not your first language, then as public speaking is scary for most people, when it's your second or third language, as it would have been for many of these Scandinavians, then it's extra scary. So when I became fully self-employed, I decided, well, actually, public speaking at a wedding is the scariest of all, because it's personal and it's an emotional, and theoretically it's a one-off. So I decided to specialise in that. And I wrote a book. Nigel, you may have heard me mention it in one of our mutual friend John Lynch's webinars. I wrote a book called The Wedding Speech Handbook, and John, I think, was kind enough to write the foreword for that very book.
Very good. Interesting. I have read some of it. I think you had some parts of it with you when you came.
Maybe I did. I
Gave
say to
quotes
people,
from
it's a book for dipping into.
Yes, yeah. Great. And what would you say is your biggest post-retirement achievement? Now,
To become a sought-after bedtime story reader to my 3.5-year-old grandson.
Brilliant.
And I love it so much. I just bought yesterday a hardback copy of Winnie the Pooh because he's ready for that now. And so I've been doing that for the last year and a half, really, and he loves it so much that I now have started a separate podcast called Story Time with Grandad, and I record stories and put them on there so that if he and his parents are travelling and I'm not around, they can say, would you like some music or would you like a Grandad story?
Oh my goodness, that's wonderful. What a great achievement.
Such a good idea, that, Michael.
Thank you.
Because
thank you.
we thought of it.
My next question to you was going to be, well, how do you do it if you're not there all the time? And you've answered that. Do it as a podcast. That's terrific.
Yes. Well, they live pretty nearby, which is why I moved to Birmingham, basically, because I was living in Bristol, and many of the author friends that we have in common, Nigel, are based around Bristol. And I had 20 very happy years in Bristol. But because my daughter and son-in-law were living in Birmingham, and they had this new baby, now 2 of them, I thought, well, I'm going to miss out on all this. And I have so many friends who are grandparents, as you two might be, and I'd heard all these wonderful stories about how great it is to be a grandparent. I thought, well, I'll miss out on that if I'm not on the spot. So that's why I moved. But nonetheless, I maybe see them twice a week on average. And so, for example, I'll see them this evening, but then they're going away for the weekend. And then they can, on their car sound system, which is very sophisticated, they can call up one of several, or quite a few, stories that I've recorded there.
Right, that's wonderful. Colin, your turn.
Well, I'm speechless, Michael. That is such a good idea. I wish I'd thought of that one. Yeah, so generally, I know that one of the things, because I've seen, the podcast you do, the whole emphasis on positivity, on resilience for life, and I know you give the example of 2 people who have the same diagnosis, and what are the options, and the options are the support you explain, and then your own resilience. So it's down to you. And that's something that's not often talked about, but it's down to us to look after ourselves. That's the way you feel about it?
Absolutely. And in fact, Baz Luhrmann, the film producer, I think he's Australian, but he's a pretty famous guy. He published a spoken word record which became a big hit in the 90s. And
I know.
In that, it was called something bizarre, like Don't Forget the Sunscreen or something like that. And because he was an Australian, he said, wear sunscreen. He said, now that's the only piece of advice in this rambling monologue that's got scientific basis. All the rest of it is my own observations. And one of the things in that spoken word piece, which my daughters, funnily enough, alerted me to, was remember the compliments you receive and forget the insults. And then if you can succeed in this, will you please tell me how? Which, of course, is... I guess I now know the reason for that. But we're better at remembering what went wrong than what went right. So you have to what he's saying is you have to make a positive effort to remember what went right in your life as well. Because evolution will remind you what you did wrong. It's something called problem solving and survival or something like that. And so if you make the effort to remember what went right, well, one of the best compliments I've ever had was our company was being taken over, and I mentioned I worked for this Swedish company for 20 plus years, and they looked after me extremely well. Hostile takeover by a competitor. And I decided, I was the MD in the UK, and I thought I would treat myself to some what you might call outplacement consultancy. So I basically hired the consultancy firm of our auditors to give me some outplacement consultancy. And the partner responsible was fantastic. I knew the guy well anyway. And he said, I think you're very well placed for this next step because you have incredible resilience. And I thought, and I never thought about that. And what he said was, he said, it's an attitude of mind. You're a positive person, and you're ready for this change. You've got the resilience. And so the change of retirement, whether it's from full-time work or from part-time work or whatever it is, it's a change. And people say there's only 2 things certain in life, death and taxes. Well, there's a third one, which is change, and not being ready for change is problematic.
Yeah, very wise words.
Definitely. And you were talking earlier about where you're living at the moment, and I think that's
Yes.
an inspirational story as well, Mike.
Well, that's a change that happened almost by accident, really. Living in Bristol, very happy years, and then my daughter and son-in-law had a baby, and now two, and then I decided that I would miss out on the growing up stage of these two little beings if I wasn't living nearby. So I decided to move here. So I told them, right, I will move to Birmingham. I didn't put a date on it. I said I will move, maybe sometime in the next year, sort of thing. My son-in-law, because he's very proactive, knows the Birmingham property market like the back of his hand, said, I'll find you somewhere good to live, and hopefully near us. And so within 24 hours he said, right, I've got 4 viewings arranged for tomorrow morning. I was a bit shocked. But anyway, the first place he brought me to was the place I now live. And I didn't realise it's a retirement village. And I didn't realise, because outside there was a big board saying restaurant and bar, but it didn't mention a retirement village. So I came in. Oh, it's got a nice feel to it. It felt more like a small hotel. Friendly people, friendly staff. And so I've been here now 2.5 years, and I absolutely love it. To me, I was a singleton, basically. I've been divorced for 30 odd years, basically, 25, 30 years. For a singleton like me, it was a perfect solution. And also, a lot of people who live here are widowed. Ladies and men are widowed, and that's the reason that they moved here, because they've been living in a house nearby, and they decided, well, I don't need this house now, there's only one of me, so they moved in. So for a variety of reasons, and we all muck along very nicely. We loads of activities. My younger daughter that is, who lives in London, said, Dad, this is not a retirement village, it's more like a hotel with a youth club attached, lots of activities, not compulsory.
So you should rebrand it then, the Youth Club
Yes.
Hotel.
Youth Club Hotel, exactly. Well, it's run by a company called Audley, and they're one of the bigger ones, I would say, at the upper end of the market, so to speak. But the definition is independent living. In other words, people who come here are capable of, managing their own lives in their apartments and getting involved in the communal activities, which are mostly run by residents, by the way. Some run by staff, some by residents, some jointly. So, for example, we had a seminar here about dementia, which was run by the general manager here, but I helped in it, and I helped promote it, and I spoke a little at the end of it, and I'm the sort of acting as a sort of ambassador to provide outreach to people who want to know more about it. And so it's something that I'm researching for the very good reason that we live next door to a very large care home, and it's a care home run by Care UK, but that's a totally different model to what we have, because we are independent living, that's a care home. But of course, we're aware of the fact, dementia now being a big killer, we're aware of the fact that a lot of people who came here in perfect health might not be in perfect health later on. So therefore, I'm very interested in finding out more about it. I'm reading a wonderful book at the moment by Atul Gawande called Being Mortal, which I recommend to anyone. And I'm helping run an event next door in the care home in 2 weeks. We're running an event called Jukebox Special. And basically we have, you remember Jukebox Jury back in the day? Well, we have a guy here who owns a couple of jukeboxes, and he's got all the technology. He plays a load of singles, and I compare it, basically. So I announce the records. Normally I don't need to, because people remember what the record was called, and they remember who was singing, everything like that. And I invent the names of sponsors. So that was 3 Steps to Heaven, sponsored by Stanley Stairlifts, or something like that, So I run that, or rather help run it, in the care home next door. So I see that as, if you like, it's a ancillary to what we do here.
That's wonderful. And so, I mean, if you were in the pub talking to your best mate who says, look, I'm going to retire next week, what advice, what would be the main advice would you give him?
Well, first thing I would say is, and most of my friends don't need this advice because I think they come in this category anyway, I would say first thing is keep active. Whatever you do, keep active, and that means physically to what extent you can, and mentally. and mentally means different things for different people. So, for example, a lot of people here play bridge, play chess, play Scrabble, play a game I'd never heard of called Rummy Cub, which is very popular. And I mentioned bridge too. We have a gym, we have a pool here. So I'm lucky. So we've got those facilities on site. Probably within a mile, there are 4 gyms, 4 public gyms basically. Obviously it costs you money to join them. So I would say, number 1, stay active in whatever way suits you. Number 2, keep engaging with people, because I truly believe that one of the top predictors of long and healthy life is social contact. I think, isolation is a killer. It's as big a killer as dementia, and the two, I think, are linked as well. So social contact is so important. And I was in the gym this morning, and I mention it just for brownie points, really. I only go a couple of times a week, but I was in the gym talking to a friend of mine there, and he was telling me what he's going to do today. And he said to me, and it reminded me of something very important. He said, I think it's always important to have something to look forward to. Something to look forward to. So, yes, I think that's very good to have. I have the monthly plan, which is printed out here, pinned on one of the units in my kitchen, and I look at that and say, oh yeah, I've got such and such happening day after tomorrow, and such next. I'm seeing my daughter and son-in-law and the kiddies. Something to look forward to is important. And keeping engaged, particularly with people who've known you for a long time. People who
I don't think there's anyone as positive as you, but it's very impressive.
Well, okay, here's my other piece of advice. Don't be a news junkie. I have a lot of dear friends here, loads of friends, and I try and talk them out of being news junkies, because we have the 3 main, let's say, broadsheet newspapers, Times, Telegraph and Guardian, and the Birmingham Post delivered here to our library. We have a decent library here. And a lot of my friends are news junkies. I just go in, I scan the headlines to see what different headlines come out of the same piece of news. Then I read the sport, because that's more important. And I was being interviewed on BBC Radio West Midlands about 3 months ago. And the presenter there said to me, he said, you know what, he said, I don't understand, he said, how you can be, you're a very positive person, clearly, and you're an optimist, how you can remain that with all the rubbish that's going on in the world now. And I said, well, I decided some time ago, and I know exactly when it was, I don't need to follow the news as promptly as I need to. If I don't find out about something happening on the world stage or the British stage or what Donald Trump's doing, if I don't find out about it until tomorrow or next week or next month or even never, is it going to change my life? It will change my life not to find out about it, for the better. Because I have friends here who get angry about things that they have no influence on.
Yes.
That'll shorten your life.
I completely agree. Yes. So as a sort of final question, Michael, what's next?
Well, what's next is, for me, one of the bonuses of living here is this retirement village is the only, of Audley's 21, I think it is, retirement villages, this is the only one that's just on the outskirts, well, it's not really the outskirts, of a large city. Birmingham is the second city, over 1 million people, and so within a 20-minute walk, if I choose to walk there, or 5 minutes on the tram, is Symphony Hall, which is fabulous. And so there's a concert I'm planning to go to in a week's time. As to what's next, I'm going to Centre Parks with my family next weekend, not Easter but the weekend after, and that's going to be a ball. And then what else? I don't know. I need to look at my diary to remind myself what's on, because there's a lot coming up, I know. And I'm sorry, Nigel, you'd be very disappointed if I didn't say there's a book in the pipeline, and it's a book about retirement, because every day I write something in my handwritten notebook, and then I transfer some of it to my Substack, which I'm learning about how to do, and then eventually it's all grist to the mill to a book about retirement, basically. So that's in the pipeline. Brilliant. I hope to get the retirement book done faster than my other books.
Well, Colin and I will definitely read that, because we've thought of doing the same thing based on our interviews that we do.
So you should.
After about 6-9 months or so, and do a book summary. We've agreed that we will have a go at that. So
good.
I think this has been fantastic, Colin. I think it's been absolutely inspirational. It's so kind of you to volunteer to come on
My pleasure.
and give such an excellent presentation. And I know we're going to get a lot of interest in this. And I'm going to tell my author friends, particularly, to have a look at this one.
Yeah.
At you. So,
Before
thank you
we
very
leave
much.
the subject, let me repeat what I said to you in advance of this interview. I said, I'll return the compliment. And now, where is the book? I've forgotten it now. It doesn't matter. Listen, I will return the compliment, invite you, whichever of you, or both together, to come on as a guest
Yep.
on our podcast, which is called Seniorship.
Yes.
Yeah, would be absolutely delighted, Michael. And we'll put a note at the end of this at the session so people can see seniorship. And thank you very much. It's been an inspirational morning. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you, gentlemen.
Michael.
Thanks, and bye-bye.
Whoa, Nigel. That was just, I could listen to Michael all day, and it was all so interesting.
Lots of new stuff, new ideas. Everything was positive.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to sum it all up. But if you enjoyed that, if you enjoyed hearing Michael, then please give us a thumbs up, press the subscribe, and so on. So of the many things, the first I took was the keep active physically and mentally. Just very important.
That's a good one. And he also said, keep engaging with people. And I think that's so good. It's no good doing everything online, communicating with people only online. Meet people and communicate with them. Be interactive. That's a very good one because we can all learn from that.
And as part of that, look forward to have always things in front of you. So he has his monthly planner. What a good idea. So he can look at any time, see what's happening in the next few days.
And a new one that he came up with next, which I made a big note of because I'm a bit in danger of doing this. Don't be a news junkie. I think it'll help to keep you positive if you don't spend half your day reading bad news.
Yeah, completely. And actually, you used the word positive. He was using the word positive all the way through, including the Baz Luhrmann song and so on. So,
Yes.
terrific. Really enjoyed that.
And every statement he made was a positive one. And that's such a good lesson. Resilience and positivity.
Yeah, and he says, remember the compliments, forget the insults.
That's a new one.
We should all, Nige, we should do that every day.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. And we should do a podcast maybe.
yeah, I think
Another
so.
one.
Yeah, you do him again. Yeah, definitely. And the final one, relevant for me, I've got a new grandchild on the way who's going to be born in America. And what has inspired me was to do a podcast. So I'm going to build up a podcast or whatever I do of reading stories to the grandchild. And I think that's a terrific thing. So thank you so much for that, Michael.
And I've got one thing to add. Don't forget Winnie the Pooh.
Never forget Winnie the Pooh.
Never forget it. Yeah, thank you, Michael. Really inspiring. Really fabulous.
Yeah. So are we all done, Nige?
I think we're done.
So it's encore and out.
It's encore and out.